All right, guys, happy Monday. Hopefully everything's going good for you. Hopefully you guys are getting off to a good start to a new week. This weekend I listened to an interview and I was like, you know what, this actually covers a lot of topics all at one. So I was thinking this guy's obviously a whole lot smarter than I am. Let's listen to him this morning and see what he has to say about what he expects to go down with the economy moving forward and what to expect. Here we go.
On the markets and the financial sector. I want to bring in Bob Diamond, CEO of Atlas Merchant Capital, former CEO of Barclays, and our guru on all things Fed and finance these days. What would you do?
I think the Fed, listen, they waited too long. We know that. So we had raging inflation.
What he's saying is they waited too long. The Fed waited too long to raise interest rates.
A year ago. I think it's about a year ago they began the rate rises, and it's now 4.5% to 4.75% in a year. And I think the Fed is reasonably pleased. My sense is we have, maybe 25 to 75 basis points to go, somewhere in that area.
Now, I was saying 25 basis points, one more rate hike, but with the numbers coming in strong, with unemployment still doing really well, and the inflation not going down as low as they thought, I think maybe we're in for at least another 2 rate hikes.
And then they'll pause and keep an eye on it. And I think inflation has peaked. It's definitely started to turn.
But turn to what, turn to what, 5%, to 3%, to 2, getting to 2%, is it going to be a project?
I don't think, if the Fed...
Now, the reason why he's bringing up 2% is because that's been the case that that's the Fed's goal, is to have inflation at 2%. And that's been since Alan Greenspan many, many years ago, after Paul Volcker for the Fed chair. But right now, there is zero chance of 2%. I mean, literally, they should not even consider a 2% inflation rate, because that's not happening at all in the next 6 to 12 or probably even 18 months. If they can get it down to 4%, that would be a win in my book.
If the Fed sees inflation in the 3 to 3.5% range, Andrew, I think they'll be cautious. They're not going to slam the brakes and say it has to get under 2%. So, I think we've seen the worst in terms of, the economic correction. I think 2023 is still going to be very challenging. The economy hasn't totally adjusted to 4.5%, 5% interest rates.
And what he means by adjusted is rates are higher. So when rates are higher and things are more unaffordable, typically prices come down. And prices in housing might have come down a little bit, but that's because it was way, way, way too high 6 months ago. So now it's come down to a more reasonable amount, but it's not reflecting what the interest rates are today. I think with 5G, it'd move a little bit faster.
But I do think that this is, the economy is still growing. And
the real economy of the markets, because you could say that the stock market is looking out hopefully 12, 18 months from now.
Yeah.
I could make an argument about that. Today, though, you talk to people in the shipping business even. They say, look, there's not as nearly as many boxes coming off
any of the rate sensitive.
Facts.
You know what I'm saying?
We wanted the economy to slow down. We needed to get interest rates up. Was it a normal
inflation to go down
for 14 years of zero interest rates? That was in essence, to feed the monster here. It was.
I like to use the say it out loud method. You see, these guys. I'm listening to this guy because he's a pro, he's a professional, but even the pros get it wrong. If you listen to any of my other videos in the past, I talk about how, listen to the experts, but create your own opinion. If you use the say it out loud method on this one, 0% rates for over 10 years, that sounds absolutely ridiculous. Yet the experts, the people who are the smartest people in the world at the Fed, couldn't figure that out, couldn't foresee that having rates this low for this long was going to create one hell of a bubble. Sounds like common sense when you're Monday morning quarterbacking, but if you also said it out loud, hey, I'm going to keep interest rates at 0% for over 10 years, That would have solved the problem, in my opinion. And here we go with the buffering. Maybe I'm
It
not
was
on
the
5G.
public sector excess of zero interest rates for 14 years creates bad decisions. And it also is a stimulus that we have to pay
Wow,
back
it must
for.
have been really bad to get you to that point to say that. Wow, unbelievable.
But this is much more normal. You know, you have a 10-year at 4%. There was 10 years leading up into COVID where it was between 1.5 and 3. A dip below 1.5 during the worst of COVID. But I think a more normalized interest rate environment, a little bit of volatility, a steeper curve, these things are all very, very positive for the economy in the medium to long term. Obviously, it's an adjustment right now.
But, Bob, every risk manager I know, they're not saying it's certainly happening, that we're going into some tailspin or some big downturn. But every risk manager I know who's lived through a lot of these things is taking precautions at this point. You've got Steve Schwarzman telling his companies to be your own bank. Don't need money for the next 18 to 24 months.
Yeah.
And the reason why they're saying be your own bank, don't need money, is because the interest rate that they're going to get it at is going to be much, much higher than probably, and it's going to really cut into their profit margins.
6 months we've been hearing this from Jamie Dimon and other folks.
Well, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, but we don't know if it's likely to happen, but the odds are higher than
I mean, my sense is, the most recent one I lived through is post the financial crisis in 2009. It was like really deep, really dark, and fairly short, as it turned out. I don't think this is going to be deep and dark. I think we're seeing an economic correction. It's going to continue. You know, one of the things we do like at Atlas Merchant Capital is the distressed business, which we started about 3 years ago. There's going to be some great opportunities in corporate stress because of bad decisions that were made.
Richer. Because when people are down and out and in a desperate mode, and this is why people hate CEOs, because when you're down and out, good old Bob Diamond is going to come in from Atlantis Merchant. He's going to come in, swoop up, and buy everything on sale.
You know, in such a long period of zero interest rates.
At the same time, these low interest rates, people were able to live off of business models that really aren't sustainable long term because of this very low very low rate scenario. Now that rates are more normalized, because this is typically a normal market with these rates the way that they are now. We just don't remember since 2008. But now that rates and everything is stabilizing to more normal times, a lot of people are getting caught with their pants down because they fundamentally weren't good at the basics in their business. And that's where Bob Diamond comes in and swoops up.
But looking at the economy, I think this is going to be longer in terms of a correction, but much more mild than I think what the worst we're anticipating.
Would you rather have zero? I mean, zero inflation is definitely overrated. Nobody likes that. We saw that in.
Listen, we were hearing for 10 or 15 years the best thing that could happen is a little whiff of inflation. We got more than a little whiff.
How about people that have to have some fixed income or defined benefit plans or insurance companies or people that are retired living on fixed income? I mean, if you're at 3%, so what do they get? I mean, that's not an exorbitant yield you're going to see on the on the long end. It's not the end of the world.
No, and I think this environment is. I actually think, as we said earlier, the Fed waited too long, and they helped. Probably raise inflation higher than we had wanted. But I've got to believe they're feeling reasonably good right now that they've got this thing back in a more normalized position. And I think, from an economic point of view, the economy's not collapsing. And somewhat higher interest rates are pretty normal and good.
Can I ask you a banking question?
You may.
Which ones do you like? We were talking to David Solomon earlier.
All right. It gets pretty boring after that, and hopefully this video wasn't boring at all, but I just find it fascinating to hear other people's opinions that are at a much higher level than I am. And obviously, if I think that that was to me worth watching, hopefully it was worth watching to you. Hopefully I didn't have too many breaks, and hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week. And please remember, life's not meant to be, it's meant to create. Too strong.